Welcome to another episode of Lifelong Learner. This is the Out of Class edition with Ben, Janesh, and Matt. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Lifelong Learner. Morning, Ben. How you doing?
Janesh, mate, really good. Really good. Good to see you. And how good is the weather today in Melbourne?
I know. I feel like it's been a while since we've been able to say that.
Yeah, it has been a while, except we had incredible weather Thursday, Friday for my big hike.
Oh, mate, we talked about at the end of last podcast about challenge, mate, and uncomfortable situations. And, mate, tell us about this epic hike. You went to condense a 4-day hike, I heard, into 2 days.
Yeah, so it was kind of double the distance in double the speed because we needed to do 2 days in just 1 day. So, mate, it was epic, and it's what I call a long hard. I realise that in life there are short hard things that you just got to do in the minute, and then it's over. Maybe it's for an hour, something that's hard for an hour. Then there's long hard things that just go on and on and on and on. And this was one of those long hards. So, mate, it was really, really good. I got to do it with Logs, and but it was one of the top 3 hardest things.
Wow. Top 3 hardest things.
Yeah.
What made it hard?
Hot. Like unusually hot. You know, like you acclimatise. Down here in Melbourne, we just had sort of cold weather for a bit. Yep. And then all of a sudden, and it was actually quite cool on the Wednesday. And then Thursday we woke up and the sun was shining, the skies were blue, and it got to 35 degrees on the mountain that day. And we're hiking double distance, not double speed, but attempting to. And then the next day was 40 degrees up there. And so that made it hard. What also made it hard is deciding to do something new, something different, which was to no longer use my hiking shoes, my hiking boots, but to wear barefoot style runners with my busted up foot, and to try those on a hike, and that just didn't work, mate.
Mate, so I got a question before you go any further. How did you think that was going to be a good idea?
Well, I'd given myself kind of a month before to sort of get used to them a bit.
Did you do any hiking in them?
No. So running and hiking, they're actually very different activities.
As you learned on the weekend, on the last week.
Walking it actually requires different muscles, a totally different gait cycle to running. And so, mate, that brought me just literally a lot of pain. And so that made it extra hard as well. It was fantastic. It was beautiful terrain. It was great to do it with Logan, and it's good to do hard things. And as I was talking to a mate this morning, often life gives us long, hard things, not in our choosing. So it's nice to actually become toughened to long, hard things by choice. To actually choose to do some long, hard things. And I know you often do long, hard things, ultra marathon stuff that you've done. And it's kind of nice to try that on for a little while. And so that when life does throw you a long, hard thing, you've got the mental and sometimes what's required, the physical stamina and ability to deal with it. What do you reckon about long, hard things versus short, hard things?
I'm a fan of them. I'm a fan of them because I think you learn a lot about yourself. You at times can find yourself. You can go into dark places, and then come out of it. I think it's we don't do that usually willingly, right? And it's nice to do it willingly. it takes the edge off a little bit because it's your choice, right? There's none of this like, you can't throw yourself a pity party, right? You can't, you're like, I chose to do this. I'm a fan. I do like it. Having said that, last year, probably didn't do anything super long, hard voluntarily. Which I noticed, I think when we talked about our end of year reflections, that was in one of them. I was like, I wonder why. But yeah, no, I'm a fan. I don't think it does help for other things. I think on day to day, it makes short, hard, involuntary things seem easy. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, again, like the difference between walking and running, there's a real different energy and mindset that's required when you do long, hard versus short, hard. And, but I guess what it does bring up is that when you're doing a short, hard, it can, the fact that it doesn't have a long time span to it can make the end in sight seem, because the end is quicker, it's going to come around quicker. I think it can make it a little easier. Long, hard, like when we set off and it was kind of by morning tea time on day one, and I'm thinking, my foot's a bit sore.
Already on Thursday.
Yeah, shit, I've got the rest of today and all of tomorrow, right? And so, when we think about the end, there's hope. Do you know, like there's a place, there's going to be that, I can't wait till the end. Can't wait to the end. Sometimes we start these things and it's not long in and we start to think about the end, right? And the thought of a Palmer and a pot, zero beer pot, by the way, listeners, the idea of a Palmer and a pot, mate, that thought sort of came in by about 9:30 a.m. that is. And it, mate, I've got to say, definitely on day two, the idea of a Palmer and a pot at the local pub when we finished was very. It's one of the things that kept me going. The hope of getting to the end, and I think that's when we think about so many hard things that come into our life, sometimes they get way harder when there is no hope, when there is no Palmer and pot at the end. You can't see the Palmer and the pot. It's just more hard terrain, more hard, hot days with no end in sight. And that's got to make it tricky when we go long, hard.
Yeah. But sometimes, when you're that in it, it's really hard to see that Palmer and pot. Or you don't know what that Palmer and pot even looks like. Like, so you knew, that's a Palmer and pot. This is the end game. But what if, like, say, I'm trying to think of an example, like an involuntary long hard, and you don't know what the Palmer and pot is. So you can't visualize it. You don't know what that even looks like. You can't conceptualize that. What do you do then?
Yeah, I think that's where it's so important to find the time in the crazy to actually pause, stop, and literally like we did on the trail, make a cup of tea and just stop for a little bit and think about, like, what is the end game? Where is this going? And sometimes we can only focus on the worst, but to actually then think about, like, what is really the worst thing that could happen? And when we actually do that, I've got to say 99.9% of the time, the worst thing isn't really that bad. It's actually quite bearable, and it's quite doable. And sometimes we can actually do what's the worst thing, and if we think about it long enough, it can actually turn to, this could actually be one of the best things ever. So we move from a place of not just knowing what the end game might be, but being more excited about the end game. So often when we're stuck, when we're in a dark place, it's because we haven't actually explored what is what is at the end? You know, like what is the worst thing that could happen if, you know, if we get to the end of this journey, like what could be the consequence? And sometimes we have catastrophized. We've made, as the old saying is, made a mountain out of a molehill. When we really do reflect on it, it's actually not that bad. Or, like I said, it could actually be really cool.
So, mate, curious to know what made that hike in your top 3 hardest things you've done.
Well, wrong footwear when I've got a broken foot.
How is your foot now, by the way?
It's sore.
Yeah.
It's sore. Like Saturday, I woke up and it was like broken. I couldn't stand on it. You know, I had that big wedding. I had the big wedding to go to on Saturday, and so I couldn't. But you know,
how'd you dance, mate? Did you boogie on the dance floor?
A few more steps and a few more. It kind of loosens up a bit, and you know, a little bit of pharmaceutical help.
Yeah.
And
you made it to the dance floor.
Yeah, mate, I was up there jigging
Good.
up and down. So the wrong footwear, extra hot weather, which was, you know, so unacclimatized to the footwear, unacclimatized to the weather, unacclimatized to the terrain. When I run, you know, I'm not running up mountains, whereas this was, you know, the Grampians Peaks Trail, which is not Grampians Peaks, which means you go up and then you come down and then you go up and then you come down and then you go up and then you come down. And so, you know, unacclimatized to that. So lots of unacclimatized, I think, was what made it extra hard. And isn't that true with anything that we do that's hard? It's because we're not acclimatized to it. It's in our known. If it's already in our wheelhouse, it's not a hard thing.
Yeah.
It's only if it's an unknown that it's something becomes hard.
Mate, so what
have you got hard this year? What's your long hard?
Wait, hold on. Rewind. I got another question for you, though. Mate, what did you learn on the trail? What did you learn on the trail?
Here we go.
What did you learn now post-experience?
Okay, I made some notes on this.
Oh, you did? Look at you, mate.
I made some notes on this because I was thinking about this. I was coaching a group yesterday, and here's my lessons from what I learned. Sometimes the environment works against you. Sometimes your environment, you get put in an environment that actually works against you. I do everything as much as possible in my world because I really, this is a story that I have, is that our environment supports your performance, or almost sometimes can dictate your performance. So I do my best to set myself up for a great environment. But sometimes you'll actually find yourself in an environment that does not support you, and yet you've still got to perform. So. And that was certainly the case when it came to weather and terrain. Number 2 was follow the markers. Mate, life gives you markers. It actually gives you markers. Follow the markers, because if you don't follow the markers, you'll get off trail. We got off trail a couple of times.
Was that voluntary, not following the markets, or involuntary?
Well, so follow the markers. Life sometimes even gives you a sign, and it's not like it's actually written. Like it says, this is the way, but there are these other ways, and sometimes we're just so in our head, and we're not present enough, and we don't pause for long enough to actually read the, and we take the wrong path. You know, how often have we done in our lives where, we get to a junction and there's a number of options, and we don't really explore the options properly. We don't read the signs that life is giving us properly, and we do take the wrong path, but we don't realize that it's the wrong path. You know, we get on the path and we start heading down the path and it all seems good. And it's not until we're a little ways down the path, like half a K down the path, and we realize this wasn't the path that we were supposed to be on. And that certainly happened. In fact, it was using an app called All Trails. Fantastic, by the way. Listen, if you're hiking anywhere in the world, it's called All Trails. It's full of all the different trails throughout the world. It's amazing. Well, on aeroplane mode, so I was conserving battery, but I had all trails running, and I'm heading down this path, this trail, and my phone's binging. I'm thinking, what is that? I'm on aeroplane mode. How am I getting bings? How am I getting text messages? And it just kept binging every minute. It was binging, and I thought, this is ridiculous. Logan, let's just pause for a second, mate. I need to find out what's going on my phone. Anyway, I open it. Here's all these messages from All Trail saying,
you are
off trail. Do you want to continue? Do you want to continue? And so we needed to turn around. And as I turned around, I said to Lokes, there's a K I'm going to regret at the end of the hike. And my foot is super sore. It's a K that I just didn't need to do.
Yeah.
So it'll give you a sign. But you know what? You don't want too many. Life would be boring. This is why we go hiking in the bush. This is why we go and we do trail hikes. We go hiking is because we don't want it perfectly marked. We don't want level terrain. We don't want to be on a foot. And you just kept looking down. As long as there was a yellow line at each step you took, you knew you were on the path. Mate, boring. So we don't want life to be like that either. We want these occasional markers that as we go through life, I'm on track. Oh, there's another one. I'm on track. But in between that, you want to be free. You want to feel like you're still treading your own path. When like I said, when you get distracted, it costs you. Sometimes you're walking and you're kind of looking around and you're not really focused, and then you do find yourself taking the hilly way or the rough terrain way rather than the smooth way. So beware of distractions. Have someone to champion you. No way I could have done the walk without Logan to champion me along the way, to support, check in with me, doing okay, come on, Dad, let's go, not far to go. It's important to go through life with someone to champion you, whether it's your partner, whether it's a team, whether it's a boss, someone to champion you along the way. And here's the other thing. Life's easier when you champion others. So not only was Logan a champion for me, but when I championed him, it made the journey easier for me. That's so true of life. If you can go through life and be the champion to others, it makes things easier. Yeah. That was another lesson. Getting cadence. This was a big lesson for me. Often I go through life at my own cadence, which is quite a quick cadence. Not everyone's at that pace. And so you can end up at your cadence. You can bring some pain to others because you're not in cadence with them. And it can make it life tricky for you too. And so just being aware of the cadence of people around you and respecting their decision to be at their cadence and finding that happy balance. Bringing people up towards your cadence and sometimes needing to bring your cadence down to their cadence or vice versa. So just be aware of the cadence of others. And so that was true for Logan and I when we were walking. He would set the pace, but if he set the pace too hard, he'd lose me. And that kind of magnetic attraction between the two of us would disappear. So he had to set his cadence at just the right kind of pace. And I had to be aware of my cadence, that it wasn't too slow, nor that it was too quick. Otherwise, I'd be clipping his heels. There's nothing worse. You hike and there's someone right on your heels, So it's getting that cadence right through life. That was a big take home for me. And then the last thing I think was the idea of finishing strong. Make sure that you are aware when the finish line's coming up and that you're ready to finish strong. You don't want to stumble over the line. And this came up for me. We came down into Hall's Gap, and where the trail comes out, you come out at the cricket ground, and there was guys playing cricket there, and we went, we're done. Well, no, we still had another K to walk
to the car.
And so, but we'd gone, we're done. Like we went hard to that point, right? And then it was, oh no, we're not done. And that last K was really, really tough. Yep. So knowing where the finish line is and making sure that you finish strong. So we had to kind of pick ourselves back up again and then bring it again for that last K. So as we did walk into home territory and we'd finish strong. So that was some of the kind of the snippet lessons. The overarching lesson was, I think, the lesson around cadence. And mate, and this one that I'm still feeling into and not clear on yet, that I'm getting older. I'm actually getting older.
Mate, speak to me about that, because I know this is a like a contention with you. Like, I think you're like, you don't like that, the tired, and you're like, no, I'm mate. So talk to me. You've pushed this one away for a long time. You're getting older and realizing that your body can't bounce back, or you just can't do things as fast or athletically, or what's the thought process here?
I think I'm not as flexible. I'm just not as flexible. And I think mentally, I'm not as flexible. And you hear people saying, and I'm finding myself saying this more, I'm 54, I can do what I want. I don't have to be flexible. You know, that sort of comes up, right?
Yes.
I've earned my stripes. If I want my tea this way, I'll have my tea this way. I know, but Logan, you love this podcast, mate. Number one listener. This can be sometimes a challenge for Logs because, you know, the younger generation can be at times like really like whatevs, mate.
Yeah.
Whatevs. But if I order a hot,
Extra hot latte.
Mate, I want it extra hot. I'm not flexible on that. I know what I like, right? But, you know, when you're younger, like whether it's hot or cold, whatevs, mate. Whatevs. But at 54, no. I know I like it extra hot.
Oh, that's gold.
I'm not flexible on that. So I think there's a bit of that, right, when I talk about that. And also just not as flexible when it comes to dealing with physical things. You know, when things are hard and you're younger, it's just as hard as it is for when you're 54, but you bounce back a little quicker. You know, there's that flexibility, elasticity almost, versus just that elasticity is not there. That flexibility is not there as much. And there was this realization that it's kind of how it's meant to be. It's kind of how it's like, you're just not meant to be as flexible at 54 as you are at 24. That doesn't mean they'll give in. So it's like, where's that balance in that?
Where did you end up landing? Or are you still landing? Where did you on that?
Haven't yet.
Yeah, okay.
I haven't worked it out. It's more a realization that there's some truth in that. That at 54 I can't do what I was doing at 24. And I'm not supposed to either.
Mate, I'm curious.
I'm actually not supposed to.
When and / if do you share that with Michelle? I'm curious, what did she say? Did she have like a I told you so moment? Or I've been trying to tell you this for a while?
Oh, yeah. Don't actually worry about that. Yeah. But, you know, like, yeah, so it's an interesting space. So I came back and listened. And listeners, if you have not listened to Arthur Brooks talk about the second half, he's got a book out called Strength to Strength. Have you read that yet?
Yeah, it's a good one.
Janesh?
Yeah, I have.
It's like really good. He talks about the difference between fluid intelligence and crystal intelligence. When you're young, up to the 35, 40, somewhere around there, up to that point, you've got a fluid intelligence, creative, high energy, that fluid flexibility, that adaptability and finding the new paths. Versus after 35, 40, you move to more a crystal intelligence, which is all about it's crystallized and there's a wisdom. You've gone the path. You can offer guidance around the journey that might be ahead, but you don't have that fluid flexibility anymore. And so coming back from the hike, I went back and have done some of Arthur Brooks' work and kind of done some reading around that to understand, the transition that comes after 35, 40, which, mate, you're not too far away from.
All right, so what you're saying, I need to enjoy my fluid years, mate, before I crystallise.
Before you start crystallising.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between being 12 and 22.
Yeah, it's a different phase.
There's a big difference in those 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a different phase, a different like a different chapter of your life, right? Like, and you live it out similarly, however, like different, like still within your personality and your character. However, things change, right? Your values change, things that you value change, and also probably how you do things change. And I think, as you said before, I think you're meant to, right? You're meant to. It's not, you're not probably meant to be doing things that we did when we were 19, right? We did those things for a reason, and you learn from them, and then you go on to do different things, or you change the way how you do things.
Yeah. So, mate, tell me, what's your long hard this year?
Mate, that's a great question. Probably two things I can think of. Yeah, so I think, yes, I'm going to say it. When you say it, it's like, it's real. So I think I will do another 100 this year, another 100K, depending on which one it is, not sure yet. That will be definitely happening this year. I think last year there was a extended hiatus, which in reflection wasn't good, didn't feel good for everything. I think, that would be a good one. I think that would bring a bit of like that voluntary long hard, I think. And I think like really the other one is an interesting one because it's still a voluntary long hard, right? It's really kind of diving in to the coaching business and kind of somewhat putting your balls on the line and going, and that's a long hard. And I know it's going to be a long hard. I'm like, and I'm straying away from that. I'm like, because I can do a short hard. It's great. But a long hard go, and I'm aware it's a long hard. If you want it, you put it in, it's not going to necessarily reap benefits tomorrow. But it's that consistency. It's like prepping for a 100K race, right? Like it's that consistent effort, week in, week out to get the results. And if you don't, you won't. And I think those two this year, they're both interesting. They're both voluntary, because if I didn't do them both, would life be the same? On the surface, yeah, but there'll be a little bit missing, I think. There'll be a little bit of a what if type of conversation happening in my head. So I think, definitely in the running. And I'm a person I think I've talked about this before, of like, once I've entered it, you back yourself in and you just find a way. And if there's no backing, there's no necessity for me personally. Things happen slower or they don't happen at all. So if I go, okay, great, this is happening, and then time keeps going for everyone. So it's like, okay, you need to start putting the work in. So, that will be an exciting one, I think, where it's like, it's refinding that, because a year of not doing it is interesting. It's probably the longest time I haven't done something super long. So it's like it feels like a restart, which sucks in a whole nother level. But it's also good. I think exciting, because you can kind of have or create some fresh habits around it that, the other ones I usually go mentally strong, but not physically strong, but now it's like, all right, that's how do we get the body stronger, right? Because that's again, it's a long hard, right? Get your joints good, get all the things that get your hips sorted. That's a long hard, but it's not exciting, it's not sexy, it's a long hard. Like, you can't do hip exercise for 1 week and go, yep, I got strong hips, right? It's a long, consistent. You don't see the benefits in a week. You see them long term.
So how do you do that? How do you do that? How do if our listeners are out there and they've got something that's coming up and it's not tomorrow or the next day, and it's 3 months, 6 months away that they've got to prep for. And the journey between now and then is full of not very sexy, quite boring, quite maintenance sort of items that need to be done. How do you do that? What's your strategy around that? What have you done in the past?
I would identify the Palmer and pot, and put meaning to it. Right? Put some meaning to it. Like, whatever your Palmer and pot is, identify it. And put some meaning to it. Give it a story. Give it some emotion, and make it come alive. And then you're like, oh, this is why I'm sitting here at 8:00 at night doing a hip exercise. Or this is why I gotta write this article to give to my marketers. Or this is why I'm plugging away on this little thing that may not reap a benefit today, but it will. And then you kind of remember you kind of look at that Palmer and pot and you go, okay, great. What does that mean? Why is that Palmer and pot even important? And I think if you can't put meaning to that Palmer and pot in a voluntary one or the starting, I would even question why you're doing it. Because I don't think it is sustainable. It is, it'll be like you can grunt your way through it, but it's not going to be enjoyable. I think you were saying this to me a month ago now, or nearly a month ago, when we did the arrow break. You were like, I want to bring a sense of wisdom this year, and as opposed to not like bashing, there's a sense of ease with wisdom, right? And not kind of just grunting way through with high energy, high pace, and because it takes your toll, and you're like, go, why? There should be a sense of ease to it. And if you can't put meaning to it, or if you can't identify it, I would question why you're doing it.
Yeah, imagine if you're vegetarian and you don't drink beer, and someone said, mate, you just got to have a Palmer and pot. Visualize a Palmer and pot at the end. You go, yeah, okay, yeah. And then as you're kind of on the journey, you're thinking, hang on a minute, I don't eat chicken and I don't drink beer. So often that's I think true in life. We get should on rather than, and we do what we should do, not what we really want to do. And I love what you're saying there. If it could be really easy if to really get connected and get juiced and feel the flame and feel the energy around the outcome if there's an alignment. But if there's not an alignment with where you're heading, then it can sometimes feel like hard work. Okay, I've got to work at getting my my energy around this thing, and maybe that's not what you're meant to be doing.
It's like now everyone's in a bit of, I say everyone, I'm going to say majority, are in this I feel timid or scared world of interest rates, discretionary spending going, and it's like, I think after last week's podcast, I think we talked about growth and opportunity, and it's interesting because in the last 7 days, 10 days or so, there's been more opportunities or more little things that I've just gone and let's look into this more than I have ever. And talking to other people, we go, no, I'm cutting down on this, I'm cutting down on that. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, but what are you doing instead of And like, oh no, nothing. We can't. And I'm like, oh, we should be saving now. And it's interesting because it's someone else's should. And I'm like, but you've set yourself up. I'm like, you said last year this is the go year, and they're like, yeah, but I don't know anymore. I don't know. And I'm like, but you've planned for this rise. Like, I'm like, how is that? So, which is it's super interesting because it's not their it's their long hard is like they're looking at someone else's palm and pot, right? And it's like really, and they're not excited. They're like, oh, I'm going to bunker down mentality. I'm going to bunker down and I'm going to try and weather the storm. And actually saw a quote yesterday. My friends were getting married in Bali, and it rained outside the marquee, and the bride and groom started dancing in the rain. Went out in his tux and her in her wedding dress and just danced in the rain, and it just looked awesome. And it's like the quote someone put on that was like, "Hey, don't wait till the storm weathers. Learn to dance in the rain."
No.
And because you can't choose if the rain is going to come or not, but you can learn to enjoy it.
No, it's really good. A mate of mine, Paul Dunn, the famous Paul Dunn from B1G1. When your vision becomes more powerful than your memory, your future becomes more powerful than your past. When your vision becomes more powerful than your memory, your future becomes more powerful than your past. So many people stay in memory. Oh, I remember the times, the good old times, or I've been burnt before. They spend so much time in memory rather than in vision, looking where they want to head. And when we do look where we want to head, your future becomes way more powerful than whatever's happened in the past. Secondly, I think, environment dictates, supports performance. We put on the TV the other day, and I think it was 60 Minutes was on. We never watched, what about you, but we almost don't watch any free-to-air TV anymore.
No, same.
Anyway, I don't know. It was 60 Minutes was on, and something caught our attention, and it was about this helicopter crash on the Gold Coast. And I said to Michelle, when did that happen? Like, what was it? When did that happen? And, we kind of watched the thing, and it was like a month ago. There was this big helicopter crash on the Gold Coast. We didn't know anything about it. I got back from my hike and flicked the telly on, and they were talking about Turkey and this earthquake in Turkey. Didn't know anything about it. And the media just loves creating negative stories. It loves creating that fear. I mean, it thrives on fear. Media has always thrived on fear. And so there are people at home that just watch, we've talked about this, they get up and watch the morning program, and they'll hear 3 or 4 times in an hour the story, right? The 6:30 breaking news, and then the 7 o'clock news, and maybe the 7:30 news before they leave home and head to work. And then they've got the radio on, listening to the news on the radio. And I get home from work just in time to catch the 6 o'clock news. And I watch, a bit of Married at First Sight and whatever else. And then just before they go to bed, they think, I must catch the late news. And that's the last thing they put in their head. And they've heard the negative story. They've heard about Turkey and all the people that have died, 7 or 8 times. They've gone, throughout that whole day. And, whilst it is super sad, and, if it was my parent that had passed away in an earthquake, or one of my loved ones, I'd be devastated too. But I heard the media talking about one Australian has passed away. And then it was 2 Australians. Like, there's lots of Australians dying every day. Motor vehicle accidents.
In our country, right? Not overseas. In our country. Yeah.
Boating accidents, just drownings, whatever. falling over, banging their head. And 2 Australians, like they just kept repeating, 2 Australians have died, 2 Australians have died. And with all the love, I say this, it's only 2 Australians.
Mm-hmm.
Yet when you hear it often enough, it starts to become like a big deal.
Mm.
And we start thinking in our head, well, that's a big deal. Oh my God, 2 Australians. But how many Australians die every day? How many people lose their mother or their father or a loved one every day?
Mm.
So,
mate, it's like, and again, I've strayed away from this topic, but I will talk about it now. And I respect anyone who's had family members, this is my disclaimer here, who've got serious illness and death from this. But when Victoria mainly, but other states were like, oh, we've got 10 cases of COVID, right? And we were talking to in-laws in the States, and they're like, we've got 20,000 today. And another state's got 100,000 today, right? And it was like, and it's business as usual. And it was just that media changes, and media's like, yep, we've got that, but we're still going ahead, right? And one country's media is going, hey, yep, we've got this, and this is dire. The world is going to end. Zombies are on the road, and it is like the Walking Dead series has come alive. Batten down your hatches. Don't even go near them. Wear a hazmat suit. And you're like, fuck. Right? It's these numbers, like, people don't give them comparison numbers in media, right? They put a number in and it's like, oh, wow. But then when you test those numbers and you go, hey, look, but X amount died in your council, your state, and they're like, oh, really? It fact checks it. It puts it in perspective, which I don't think people put things in perspective often enough, or put it through a filter.
I don't want to either. They're happy to be led by whatever the narrative is at the time, and the majority of the narrative is negative. And I was watching. This was all part of this whole hour or so that I was watching. It must have been on Saturday when I came back after the hike trip. I was my foot up on the couch and flicked the hotel TV on, and then one of the news anchor said, anyway, everyone loves a good story, so here's a good story. It's like, you kidding me? You liar! You liar! You do not like a good story. You know what you're about to say? It's going to give no interest to anybody at all, and they can't wait for you to, go to the next story, which is a negative story. So, yeah, negativity sells. It doesn't matter what we say. You and I, and over the years, I've heard people talk about, someone should create a positivity newspaper.
It wouldn't sell. It wouldn't sell.
It's not going to sell.
It wouldn't sell.
So,
but mate,
listeners.
Sorry, go on.
Beware. Guard your home. Guard who, literally, physically, beware of who you let into your house. Mm-hmm. Physically, like literally. Who are you mixing with? Who are you inviting to the dinner party and the barbecue? Be wary of what station you listen to on the radio. I listen to digital radio, and I listen to dance, digital dance hits. I just listen to dance hits all the time. I get in my car and there's this cool doof upbeat positive thing playing in my car. I don't listen to rap. It's all negative. It's swearing. It's like no rap. Maybe that's a 54-year-old thing. I just listen to positive upbeat music. I don't put the radio on in my car. I don't watch TV. Except, as I've said, these couple of little bursts, and it's like, oh my God, that's my dose for the half a year.
Yeah. If you think about that media ingestion, it is the type of fuel you put into your car, right? And then depending on the type of fuel you put in your car, that's how your vehicle runs, right? And I think I think people need to be aware and make an intentional choice. If you're choosing that, great. And you know what? I support it if you're making an intentional choice. But just make intentional choices. on what you're putting in, because I think it leads to, when we're talking about the long hard, like that subconscious choice, because it's easy to flick that on and ingest that type of media. People will stray away from doing voluntary long hards, right? And then when life gives you a long hard, it's all hell breaks loose. You can't hope, breakdowns, everything is in all sorts. And that may happen anyway if you've done a few voluntary long hards, but it's going to be harder, right? It's going to be harder because you're not going to voluntarily go for some of these things, or voluntarily put yourself in these situations.
Mate, take home for today's episode for our listeners. What do you reckon? What's the message in today?
Mate, I got a couple. I think be aware of what you're digesting, what you're putting in, including your circle, and what would be your long hard for this year, right? I think, and what would be your voluntary long hard? And one person's long hard might be different in terms of time frame, but it could be like, pick something, challenge yourself to pick something for, like, my long hard maybe a month or maybe 2 weeks, whatever it is. Like, I would just challenge yourself to go, think a little outside the box there, and grow a little bit with that. So I think there's value in voluntary doing a long hard. What about you, mate?
I think as one of our ex-prime ministers, Malcolm Fraser, always said, life wasn't meant to be easy. One of my mum's favourite saying, actually. Life wasn't meant to be easy. And I just think that's the take home. Guys, it's not meant to be easy. It's actually going to be hard. I think we talked about this on the last episode. There's going to be some really dark, miserable, awful moments. There's going to be moments like that in your relationship, moments like that in your health, moments like that in your career. And that's just how life is meant to be. Be ready for them. They're coming. They're coming. If you're having a great week this week, and it's all sunshine and rainbows and butterflies, mate, enjoy, listener, because there's a dark, miserable time coming. Be ready for it. Be a prepper. Do the prep work so that when the dark, miserable time comes, you're ready. You're ready to take it on. It's still going to suck, but it'll be way more bearable if you're ready. So I don't want to end on a negative note, because I think that's just life. Imagine, like I said, we want markers along the way, but not too many. There's that balance between the comfortable and the uncomfortable. Yeah. And some greatness can really come out of the uncomfortable.
But I think, mate, just on that before we sign off, but we know these people that are prepared for these, like, super dark, uncomfortable times, right? And you look at them during these times, and it seems like they've got their shit together. And you're like, how? And they still seem happy-go-lucky and all that when their world is crumbling down, because they've prepped, because they've and they know it's not always sunshine and rainbows. And so they're choosing to respond as opposed to reacting. And that's a good one. I like that one. Yeah.
And it's not to be negative. Life is incredible because it's full of amazing times and times that suck. That's what makes life incredible. So having the mindset that the suck times is what makes life incredible. So there's no negativity to it. Our parents are going to die. Mine have. My immediate family's going to die. My brother. Jim, you're going to go before me, mate. Do you know our partners are going to pass away? Michelle, you're going to go before me. It's just going to happen. It's inevitable. And getting all good with that. We're going to pass away. Get all good with that. Just recognise that life's hard, as Malcolm Fraser said. So get good with it and just love life.
Yeah.
It's not a negative thing. So, yeah.
All right, so good. As always, listeners, till next time.
See you, mate.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to another episode of Lifelong Learner. If you like this episode and want to know more and hear other episodes, head over to lifelonglearnerpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter, where you'll be the first to know when new podcast episodes come out. And if you want to say hello, tell us a joke, or ask us a question, send us an email at hello@lifelonglearnerpodcast.com. Thanks again.